We have a very special guest today and a very big message to share. I am talking today with Elaine Lindsay. She is from Suicide Zen Forgiveness, and she's on a mission to end the silent stigma and shame surrounding suicide. She's sharing stories of suicide survivors, ideation, and those left behind, and the mental health and well being of those that are feeling those ideations. Elaine, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth. It's great to be here.
I It's a very sensitive topic, but a really important one that we need to talk about. Um, can you give us a snapshot of how you came into this mission?
Absolutely. And thank you very much, because that is the point of the message. We have to talk about suicide. We have to talk about all the people we're losing, and we have to get over that stigma and shame. When I was 16 years of age, we were getting ready for an Alice Cooper concert, myself and four other friends. Unfortunately, we got stuck on New Year's Eve because it was a blizzard and it was moved to the next day and everybody was scrambling. And my dear friend Andrea was looking after her aunt and uncle, who were quite aged, and I was out babysitting. The next day, New Year's Eve, most of us weren't normally allowed out because we all had family commitments, but we were allowed to go to this concert. And I rushed through everything I did to get to the concert, only to be unable to find my friends. Long story short, found out within the first hour that my friend Andrea had taken her own life.
Oh my gosh.
I have to say that as much as I was 16, mentally, I think I might have stopped at 12, because that night is where everything in my life stopped. And I do mean that. It stopped because I couldn't deal with what had happened. I am Catholic. Most of our friends were Catholic. Andrea was Jewish. And that meant her service, brief as it was the very next day. We didn't have time to process in the way we normally did. And that made it even harder. The next 4 years was spent in evenings alone in the cemetery.
Wow.
And not in a good way. I tried to numb myself in any way I could. I messed up school. I messed up pretty much everything else, to the extent that my parents took me back to Scotland. They thought it might help with a different, place to be back at home. All it did was give me more friends to get high with and drink with and stay lost with. 4 years later, I was in a multiple vehicle accident where I was badly, badly injured. And it happened directly in front of Andrea's grave. I firmly believe that Andrea had a hand in making sure my head didn't split like a melon when it hit that frozen highway. And that's why we're here today. The last thing I'll say about that is I have to tell people I'm a super slow learner, because it took me almost 40 years to get off my duff and do something about this mission that Andrea set for me, what I call the best, worst gift you could ever be given. She showed me what it is to be left behind, so that when it came time for me, and it came time often, I ended up staying here.
Oof. Wow. Holy smokes. I am so sorry that you had to go through that, but the courage that you are showing by standing up now and saying, we got to talk about this, something has to be done. How, at what point, and what was that moment like for you when you realized, like, this is bigger than me?
Well, in 2013, I had a wake up call, if you will. And for the very first time, I told my story in public. and it became something in and of itself. And finally, in 2018, the universe had been poking at me for those 5 years. And in 2018, I was invited to LinkedIn in Toronto for the day for a tour. And I took the train. And on the way down, I had just purchased a new cell phone. So I stopped to get a case for it as I came out of the subway. And I stopped and I got a Kate Spade, beautiful case with flowers and Swarovski crystals. I'm a girly girl, so that suited me well. I was not a Kate Spade person. I didn't buy a lot of her things. She wasn't one of my favorite designers. And yet on the way home on the train, I learned she'd taken her life. And it was a tweak then, but in the back of my mind, the universe was poking and poking. Not long later, I can't remember if it was days or a week, Anthony Bourdain also left us. And those are very disparate people, but he was one of our favorite chefs. And I just realized, okay, universe, I get it. I can't just stay here and say nothing and do nothing, because all around me, people were losing people. I was losing people, friends, and and some family members. And I decided right then and there on the spot to start a podcast. Now, there was not a great deal of thought put into it. The universe was just poking, and I took up the challenge. It was called Keep Breathing, and it was kind of sporadic. I did a visioning session with some women in 2021, New Year's Day or the day after. And I had gone there to set things up for my business and figure out where I was going in the future. And at the end of the day, the facilitator asked people to share, a succinct piece of where they were going. And someone coming out of my mouth said, I'm taking up the challenge. I'm on a mission. I have to end the silence, the stigma, and the shame surrounding suicide. And everybody said, sorry, what? Like, where did that come from? The people I was with that day had no idea about the podcast. I didn't know how to share it. It is a very sensitive subject. And I'm not a serious person. It's the only other reason that I'm still here today. I have a super bent sense of humor, and it's got me through a lot. But I realized at that moment, the universe meant something way bigger. And I said, okay, like in 2013, when I told my story, I had said to the universe that first time, okay, you want me to do it? Then show me what I need to do. And within 5 days, I got a call from a friend in California who said, I know you don't like Apple, but go get yourself an iPad. You've got to come into this thing called Clubhouse. I'm sure you can use it in some way. I literally hung up the phone, got in my car, went and bought an iPad, came home, got on Clubhouse, and within a week, I was doing the Suicide Zombies and Forgiveness podcast. It was called Zombies because I had an epiphany at one point and understood that I didn't really understand people's motivations all the time. And when my granddaughter was 12, I sacrificed her to a zombie butcher in a funhouse. The story is on my website if anyone wants to read it.
We'll make sure the show notes get that link.
I will give you, yeah, absolutely. And it was, to me, horrific that I had done that. But I then understood that our lizard brain takes over. We are here to survive. And for most people, nothing else matters. Their body will just take charge. So that was a big, big deal for me. And excuse me. And about 3 episodes in, I was so fed up telling people, no, you might as well leave. We're not talking about zombies. There's no apocalypse. That's not what this is about. And so I basically reached out to the universe again and said, okay, got to change this up. And we became Suicide Zen Forgiveness, because the Zen piece is how I got to do the podcast. I had to get to a place of calm in order to do this. And the forgiveness is a massive piece in my life. I had to forgive the policeman that caused the accident. I had to forgive the people that caused me to be on the road that night. And I had to forgive me.
Ooh, there's some big words there, right?
Yeah.
You were angry.
I was angry, and I will say this for people to understand. When you are in continual pain, whether that's mental, emotional, physical, or all of the above, you don't really think outside the box. Not many people do. So I would say for a good 25 years, I was a nasty, spitting, angry victim.
Wow.
And it took me until 1997 to get out of victim mode.
So what is it? Can you maybe give a tip or two for somebody who might be in a similar place? Like, how does one, or how did you find the path to that? Because I feel like there has to be an awareness of it and a willingness to actually make that change. We get to make the choice. But at the same time, it's like, I feel it can be tricky, messy, complicated. Once you've made the choice, like, I want to heal my life, I want to change.
Yeah.
Can you maybe give like one or two little tips for listeners to, like, if you're in that space and you know something has to change and be different, and you want to let go of that anger and find forgiveness and peace, what worked for you?
Well, this interview is going to go a very different place than perhaps we initially thought.
It usually
But,
does. I should
yeah,
have warned
yeah.
you.
But I think it's truly important for this as well. And in all honesty, I want to be totally transparent. I am not done forgiving me.
That's the hardest part.
It is. It really is. And we have what I call the itty bitty shitty committee inside that is right there to post every bad thing we ever did. And it just can inundate us. How do you get over that? Well, there comes a point in when you're suffering, even as a victim, where there's a little seed inside that says there's got to be something more. Like there has to be, I see good around me. There has to be something more. And there was lots of good in my life, and I was always grateful for what I had. But I was so wrapped up in victim, I don't think I fully appreciated those things. And I had that seed, and I had started, reading a few books, and back then, while I was in the hospital, which happened an awful lot, I would watch Oprah and listen to Law of Attraction and other things that were coming out at the time. And in 1997, the universe figured out that I guess the best way to get my attention was to hit me with a vehicle. So here we go again, much slower scenario. In a parking lot of a shopping mall, we had been at a restaurant. I was with my 2 kids and my granddaughter, who was about 3.5. And she was skipping between her mom and I. And as we walked down the lane behind the cars that were parked on our right, I noticed this car just as we're passing. He's backing up, but he's looking forward. So I knocked on the trunk of the car to basically say, that's how close we were. Like, hello, we're here, and held up my hands because it was winter, the car was closed. He slammed on his brakes. We thought, okay, great. And we keep walking. 3 seconds later, we hear this creature, and I do mean creature, bellowing at the top of his lungs, using F-bombs and everything else about us. And why can't we wait? And blah, blah, like just insane. And I turned back and my daughter said, like, what is wrong with you? There's a child here. And I said, you're mental. Get in your car and get lost. Not the best way to handle things, I realized later. We walked, our car with, I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 cars past his on the same side. My daughter walked up to the door to put my granddaughter in. I don't really remember where my son was. He was heading off to Air Cadets. It was only about 6:30 in the evening. My daughter yelled. I looked up, and the man in his car had turned in to try and hit us. And I jumped in the way so that he wouldn't hit the kids and ended up on the hood of his car. He, of course, hit my legs, which are already a bit of a mess. And I'm on the top of his hood, and he backs up. Now, there were people in the parking lot. There's a grocery store and all kinds of things. So they surrounded his car and wouldn't let him go any farther. I very unceremoniously slid to the ground by his car. He got out and was yelling at people and my kids, and it was just a bit of a mess. I had mostly soft tissue injuries. He wasn't going fast. It's a parking lot. But, and here's the bizarre part. Still being so self-conscious and being so insecure, I was heavy at the time. I had put back the weight I had lost. That's a whole other story. And I was so concerned that the ambulance people would have to pick me up that I forced my son to hang on to me and crawled up the car myself.
Oh my gosh.
And trying to help the ambulance drivers put me on the gurney. The doctor said I probably made things a little worse because that was just plain stupid. But I was so stuck in my head. Something I often talk about is vanity, and the thought of people basically saying, oh, look at that fat creature. The shame of all of it was so multiplied for me. And when you're really deep in shame, there was even shame that this man had hit me, which is crazy when you think about it. But at the very same time, my head is filled with yelling, and it's back and forth, and it's like, okay, this is mental. There has to be something else. This can't be all there is in life. I'm constantly getting hit by cars, constantly. That's a long time between cars. But the whole thing was, okay, what is the central focus here? Oh my God, the common denominator is me.
That's powerful.
Oh my God. And the entire way to the hospital, I kept thinking, well, if it's me, then I have to change it. Oh my God, what do? I have to change that. And it was so bizarre because I was in a lot of pain, but I was humming with the thought of oh my God, I have to investigate this. And that's exactly what I did.
Oh my gosh. It's so powerful. And as you're explaining this, I get it. Because the day on the mountain, I just kept thinking, and I know we talked a little bit about this journey before the show, but I just kept thinking, I'm too fat to be and overweight, and people are going to laugh at me. And who am I to climb a mountain? Like, there's that war in your head
Yep.
that when I heard this is where you pivot, like, I knew, oh, like, I have to pivot. I was waiting for someone else to give me permission
Yeah.
to leave or start the business or whatever, right? Like, I spent so much time waiting for someone else to tell me, and I just had to make one more step different. Um it's not an easy place to be, because you are
Ooh.
challenging everything about you and what you know up till that point. And not only that, there is comfort in the chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um so the fact that you're willing to challenge that and be like, no, I'm not good with this. There
Yeah.
has to be something better on the other side. Holy smokes. I mean, I'm sorry that you had to go through
Yeah.
that to get it, but the universe, the universe talks to us in the way that we will understand.
That's right. And the universe knows I am probably the most stubborn cuss on the planet. So if you want to get my attention, you better do something big. And I've decided it no longer has to be painful.
Yeah, yes. I love that you said you decided.
I decided.
And when it comes from that place of you making that choice for yourself, like, you're standing up and taking your power back and going, no, like, I don't want the junk. That crap
Yeah,
is not for me anymore. I want to feel and experience life from a completely different perspective.
absolutely. And do not kid yourselves. Okay. It is not an immediate change.
Correct.
It takes a really long time. And sometimes the universe has to nudge you a little along the way, because I was searching. I started reading like the Four Agreements and the Ninth Insight and everything I could get my hands on, understand like what else is out there. And in about 2001, and again, another car. Nobody hit the car. I got my cane caught in my pant leg, and I fell out of the car. I hit the wheel well of the car next door, and not knowing at the time that I have very bad osteoporosis from the other stuff, I shattered my humerus into like 60 pieces, and it had to be repaired. But the universe really does look out for you, because I was with a friend. We were going to a movie. I just got this car, and that's why I was driving. And he got out the other side and wasn't looking in the car. But next to him, there was a truck that was very high. And the gentleman in the truck came running round, and my friend said, what's the matter? And he went, oh my God, it's okay. I called an ambulance. And Richard said, what? What for? Your friend. And Richard came around the car, and I was lying on the ground and I was bleeding. I'd hit my nose as well. And there was blood everywhere, and I couldn't move my body or my arm. I was in a lot of pain. But the gentleman in the truck, he saw my feet. He said, all of a sudden, I just saw feet come up in the air, and I thought, I have to call an ambulance. Like, he didn't even know what had happened.
Wow.
So it was bizarre, but that's how we found out that I had osteoporosis, and that's how I had more time. I was put in a like a prosthetic sling thing that they had to make for my arm. I had to go to the orthopedic surgeon every 3 days for 5 months.
Oh my gosh.
And then they realized that there was no healing happening at all. So I had surgery. And in that time, I was learning more and more, and friends came to me and said, Elaine, we would like you to go see someone. This person, like, it's not a therapist, she's a spiritual healer. And inside, I knew this person was important, but I was so convinced in my head that I was a bad creature, that I caused all the ill in the world, that I could not go because I knew she would see through me.
Ooh.
So that was 2001. I didn't go see her till 2004. And I went to see her not for me, but because our house wasn't selling. You know, the universe will work in whatever way it needs
Sure
to get you
will.
down the path that you asked for.
Yep. When it is yours, it is for you.
That is so right. And it's sometimes you don't realize that till later. It's like, oh my God, this is what I was asking for. And yet I held it off. And I will tell you that she laughed at me not too long after. During the appointment, she said, oh, honey, she said, yeah, you think you're a black hat. So not. You're a total white hat. You might have a little black band, but you're a total white hat.
Oh. But did that give you like this feeling of relief to have somebody validate you like that?
It, no, in actual fact, no, it terrorized me
Really?
because I couldn't envision a world in where I was a good person,
Ooh.
which was a hard thing to acknowledge because, you know, that's a long time ago. That was 2004. It it took a few years of seeing her constantly. She is still in my life. My son, very shortly after 2004, christened her the holistic missile because she got to the heart of whatever was going on and turned me into a different person. That's
Wow.
his words.
Yeah.
I suddenly, one story that's part of this, my son came home from school and I think I was watching, I don't know, it was probably Oprah or something, but I was crying because the story was so sad. And my son was probably, I don't know, 13, 14, oh, maybe 15. And he ended up coming in, seeing me, and going immediately and calling his father at work and saying, Dad, you'd better come home. There's something wrong. Mom is crying.
Wow.
And for that to be such a well, pivotal moment
Mm-hmm.
for our family to see me suddenly have feelings. I was this compacted creature that held myself so tight because I was afraid if I allowed myself to feel, I would just disintegrate.
Ooh. And it's interesting, right? Because we think we're so cute and good at masking, but what ends up happening is the longer you try to mask your true feelings for other people, it gets even harder to figure out what is actually yours and what is not. And your
Oh, that's such a
identity,
good point.
it throws you into this identity crisis of like, do I really feel that way? What do I like? Do I really like that? Like trying to figure out who the heck you are becomes really, really challenging after years of just wearing that mask, trying to
Decades.
zipping yourself up to appear the way society you think society wants you to
Yeah.
appear.
And an interesting thing, you know, you when you are so buttoned up, when you are wearing that mask, many of us are people pleasers.
Yes.
So I was one person with one group of people, and I was a totally different person with another, and yet another, and another. And I wouldn't bring those groups together because I was so different in each of those groups, that part of me knew, like, whoa, don't ever bring them together because they're going to start talking about, whoa, what's going on with this one?
Yep, somebody's going to spill the beans.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think, so this is important because a lot of the work that you do relates to youth and suicide prevention. And this ties in to that message because
Yeah.
it's so important for kids to understand and be comfortable with who they are and how they're feeling, and to know that there's resources out there to be able to share their feelings and to recognize and identify what that is and to feel safe.
And here's the problem, okay? We don't teach children anything about their brain. We don't teach them that your thoughts, there's, 60, 70, 80,000 thoughts, okay? Not all of them are true. Not all of them are real. And there are very few of them that should be acted on. But children can't know that because we cover up all the stuff that we're not happy with. We don't talk about suicide loss. We definitely don't talk about ideation. And mental health has only become something that we talk a little about in like the past 5 years. So my work is not just with youth, although that's where I believe we have to start. But one of the toughest cohorts that we lose are men, 45 to 64, and men and women over 80.
Wow.
Which is horrific. But the main message, it doesn't matter what age they are, the main message is you are not alone. You are not an island. Reach out to, I don't care, your neighbor, dial 988, talk to someone. Don't listen to everything that's in here, because we all have an itty bitty shitty committee. Some of us, it's not a committee, it's an entire planet, I swear.
Yes. Find a new village. Go.
Yeah. There's a lot of villages in there. But making a point of talking to someone else, and it can be really hard when they're yakking at you and they've got you convinced. But if we start teaching kids early, you don't have to go so far as to talk suicide loss and ideation. What I want people to do is to talk about the thoughts in our heads, and that they do flow through, and they're not all real or important. They're just not. And sometimes they give you dreams, and sometimes the dreams give you more bizarre thoughts. But those are things you share with others so you can know you're not the only one.
Do you think, and I think about this through all ages, right? Do you think social media plays a part in how, in that, like, and let me rephrase the question, because it's a resounding yes, but like, how badly do you feel that social media impacts this stigma? Because I feel like we're afraid to say the S word.
Yeah.
But we're okay saying mental health and depression. It's like once we get to that next level where we're talking about suicide, now it becomes this bad, dirty word. And we have to cover up how bad that depression really is. Because let's face it, right? If you're at that point, you feel like there is no other solution. And that's a really shitty place to be.
Oh, absolutely.
It's almost like you have to, it's another way of masking. You have to end up masking who you are and how badly you're actually feeling, because you don't want the outside world to see how deep that wound actually goes. So how do we got to pivot this? Like, how do we make the world more comfortable admitting this?
Well, one of the first things we have to do And I'm going to preface this by saying we are all guilty. I am still guilty of this because it's innate to being a human. We have to stop judging.
Ooh.
We cannot judge other people. Now, humans by nature are comparative. You cannot know tall unless you know short. You cannot know stout unless you know tiny. You know, there are all these different things. Notice the type of languaging I'm using. We do that because it gives us a way to comprehend what that word means. And that's all well and good. But somebody once or a million times told me other people's opinions of me are none of my business.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to put a story in here because this is what was the catalyst for a lot of the damage in my life. And this actually killed me twice. I was in my 20s. I had just had my son, who was maybe 3 or 4 months old. We were at a restaurant for brunch. It was a Sunday. The whole family was there. The restaurant was full. I went to the bathroom. I like clothing and makeup, so I was dressed up. When I came out of the stall and went to wash my hands, a lady came out of another stall. Now, all I can tell you at this point, she had brown hair. She came up near the sink and she said, "Oh my God, you are so beautiful. Why are you fat?" My
Did you
entire
want to
world,
slap her? Or
some
did
of
you
me
want to
did.
hide?
Some of me did. I wanted to go down the drain. I wanted to not exist.
Mm.
I wanted all those things, but inside, the itty bitty shitty committee were dancing a jig. They got confirmation for what they'd been telling me.
Mm.
I had seen a TV show. I don't know if it was Oprah or who it was, but they were talking about stomach stapling, and that could help you. And I was looking for confirmation that what I wanted to do was the right thing because my entire family was totally against it. And this woman, for as much as I walked out of there like I had been, sliced up by a plate glass window, I was bleeding in places I didn't know I had. And the pain was insane because as much as I wanted that confirmation, her saying that word out loud just devastated me.
Mm-hmm.
That very next morning, I called one of my doctors to get me an appointment with the only doctor in this city that was doing the procedure. What we didn't know is he was being investigated. He'd already killed 2 people. His cohort of people that he was doing this experimental surgery on was only 36, and I became number 37. I'm only going to put it shortly. I died twice.
Oof.
From 1983 till now, I suffer the effects of that every single day. And I only had my stomach stapled for 3 weeks.
Wow.
When I died on the table, he took apart everything he'd done to try and cover up his mistake. But residents brought me back.
Wow.
It took us 12 years and a courtroom to find out that my stomach wasn't stapled. And all the myriad problems that had arisen from that were just the beginning.
Mm.
So in a larger scheme of things, be careful what you wish for.
Mm-hmm. Yes. 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 Yes.
Yeah.
I just there's so much like with the judgment and social media. I don't want to blame social media for everything, right? Like, but at the same time, it's so prevalent. Everybody's got that phone in their hand all the time, and they're scrolling, and we see perceptions of beauty and ideal images, somebody else's, and I'm air quoting, right? Like ideal image. And it can be really easy to sit in judgment of that's bad, that's different. Ultimately, I want people to realize that judgment comes from fear. We don't understand. And I was just having a conversation with somebody else about this the other day. We have to start coming to conversations, to people from a very different place, instead of coming, like, recognizing the judgment, but then also choosing again and saying, no, wait, we're all human. We're on this crazy ride called life together. You're doing the best that you can in the moment right now, like coming at it from a very human perspective. We're people. We're going through stuff. We don't have to label. We can just be loving to each other and respect each other. And if we come from that place is much more powerful than the stigma, is much more powerful than the hurtful words. Like, how about we just say, are you okay?
Well, to that point, okay, back in the 80s, we had a children's wear store, and everyone we hired, I made a point of getting them to approach people who came into the store and say something positive. Their outfit, their glasses, their smile, whatever. Do not ever say, "Can I help you?" I want you to compliment them. And I've taken that on as just part of who I am, because when you compliment someone else, or when you acknowledge something they've done, like climbing a mountain, okay, when you do that genuinely, you not only establish rapport, but there's this weird bank inside that you don't know about. And when you are kind and when you give to others, that bank fills up, and that feeling is wonderful. And if you're smart and you make a point of interacting kindly and nicely with everyone, your bank will stay full. So on the days where you don't like yourself very much, you can go into the bank and pull out one or two that are going to make you feel a bit better. Yes. Because that's what it's about. And I don't care who they are or what they do, giving someone a genuine compliment. Okay. And it can't just always be the same thing. "Oh, you look great today." No, I want you to find something. Social media and the posts that you see, okay, even the words are airbrushed, okay, all of it is. I had a wonderful friend and manager many years ago who told me, if you scratch the surface, she said, basically, if you open the door to any house in the world and you just listen, you'll see that nobody's that far different from you. They have good days, good conversations, bad conversations. You will never see that when you knock on the door first.
Yes.
It's like the fly on the wall. And kids and even people right up to my age and beyond, you need to stop looking at social media like everything you see is real and that's how they're living. And because believe you me, they're not. Okay. Mm-hmm. Even people who have wonderful lives have bad days.
Yep.
We're human. Remember I said comparative? Well, that means in our emotions, in our our mental state, in that lizard brain. And even Jeff Bezos has an itty bitty shitty committee that doesn't like something about him.
Yes. And it's interesting, right? Because I feel like logically we know that it's airbrushed and a lot of it's fake, but we still give into it. And even more so, the reason that we have that little bank of positivity. And what is even harder, and I challenge people to do this, in bank up the compliments that other people give you, but
Yes,
you also need to get to a place where you can give yourself the compliment, because it almost means more when you can say it about yourself and believe it, like a genuine "I look good today," or "you did a really great job." Like when you can start to validate you without the permission of anybody else, the feeling that you get from that is phenomenal. Like you approach the world from a completely different perspective. And that is where you can actually like start to implement real change and change the world.
absolutely. And remembering we have that confirmation bias.
Yes.
And the itty bitty shitty committee are always going to aim to confirm the negative. They're not going for the positive.
Yeah.
So you need to arm the rest of you so that you're, well, I say arm yourself with love, because sometimes the itty bitty shitty committee can be useful, not often, but it's there for a reason. And again, many, many years ago, the holistic missile, my spiritual advisor, told me that, you know, we can get rid of the pieces that are negative. We can get rid of the things inside that we're not happy with, et cetera, et cetera. And then she told me, yeah, no, not with a fire hose. Don't just blast them out. You need to do it with love.
Yes. We so want to go to the fire hose and
Oh
just be
yeah,
like, "You're done, that's it," or it,
gone.
been there, done that, tried it, doesn't work. We so
Yeah.
want to take the easy way out, but it doesn't
Oh
work.
hell yeah. Absolutely.
um, where Tell us about the podcast and where people can connect with you. What can we find on the show?
On the show, it is genuinely a roller coaster ride. Our guests share their stories, and well, for me, all the stories break my heart, but they all have hope because they're still here. And that's the point of this. It's not just sharing the stories, it's not just allowing people to get it out there, because sharing your story can lighten your burden. I found that with myself. Like I said, it took me till 20 to 13 to share my story. That was one hell of a burden I was yanking around. But doing that helps the guest. It helps me because I learn and I grow. But the point is to help the audience see there's hope, even after some of the most devastating losses on the planet. Okay, there is still hope. And we as humans, for as much as it can take some of us longer than others, and some of us get caught up in the negative and stay there, and that's sad. But the fact is, we are resilient. Humans are resilient. We can, if we take charge, we can choose to get through, to make it through, to keep going.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
suicide is a very permanent solution to what is a temporary problem. And no one is an island. Reach out. Like I said, a neighbor, call 988, call any distress center, go to the 7-Eleven. They still have those down
In
the
certain
street.
places, yes.
Oh, okay. Or what is it? Circle K or go there and talk to the clerk for 5 minutes, just so you understand you're not alone. And here's the funny thing, okay? When you talk to another human anywhere, at a bus stop, in a mall, somebody you know, if you tell a sad story, they will come back with one of their own. That is right there. You're confirming you are not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that can give you the impetus to choose, you know what? I'm going to try and go on one more day. That's all I ask. Because there is a funny little thing when you go to sleep, and even if it's a 20-minute nap, the first, I don't know, 15 to 20 seconds as you wake up, you are a clean slate. There's nothing. It's just blank. You can write anything on that slate. So make a point. When you hit rock bottom, go take a nap. And as you wake up, make the choice that you're going to be better, do better, have better, because you choose.
Oh, I love that. You get to make that choice.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful and thankful that you are doing the work that you are doing to break the stigma of suicide awareness, and really re-scripting a new conversation around it. Where can we find the podcast, and where can people find you if they have questions or want resources?
Okay. So the podcast is on all podcasting platforms. It is Suicide Zen Forgiveness, but let me make it simple. If you click on www.s for Americans, zf.com. For Canadians, that's Z, szf42.com. Sorry, szf42.com and szf42.com. That's where you'll find the podcast. That's the home base of the podcast. There is a resources page. There are numbers for as many countries as we have at the moment. I'm always asking people, if you know the emergency numbers in a country we don't have listed, please give them to me and I will list it. I'm Elaine Lindsay. I'm pretty easy to find on the internet if you just Google me. There is one other Elaine Lindsay that comes up along with me, and she is an Australian author. So if it's Australian, not me. All the rest are me. And my turquoise hair kind of stands out.
Love that turquoise hair.
Thank you.
You're on LinkedIn, you're on TikTok, you're on YouTube.
Everywhere.
I will make sure that all the links go in the show notes and out on social. We'll connect, tag, comment, all the things to make sure that we try to push this out. Just keep going, guys. Please reach out to Lindsay to Elaine Lindsay if you have questions, comments, have a story to share, because I think that's really the heart of it, right? When we can share our story, like you said, you're helping yourself, but you're helping so many more people. We heal together. That is how we reshape the landscape of our whole world. It's when we recognize that. Any last minute thoughts or comments you want to make before we wrap up?
I aim to have at least one person give themselves one more day to make a change. And as I end everything I do, I want to say thank you so much for having me. And to everybody, make the very best of your today every day.
I love that. Elaine, thank you so much for joining us again today.
Thank you.
Make sure, guys, you listen to the podcast, Suicide Zen Forgiveness. Again, we'll put the links in the show notes. We are going to wrap up the way we do every episode as well. Remember that you are never stuck, you are never lost, and you are never, ever alone. At any given moment, you can use your power to pivot, make a new choice, and start again. I'll talk with everyone on the next episode. Please make sure you check out Elaine's podcast.